everyone. Welcome to the Wills, Women, and Wealth podcast. I'm Elsa W. Smith, your Maryland estate planning and probate attorney, and I'm thrilled to have you with us today. We're here to empower women who value their health, wealth, and the legacies they're creating. This podcast delves into a diverse range of subjects encompassing finance, law, mental and physical health, and beyond. Our commitment is to furnish you with invaluable insights, engaging expert interviews, and enlightening episodes that address your questions on wills, estate planning, and probate matters. Remember, this is your community, and we want to hear from you. Engage with us, ask questions, suggest topics. Let's build a dialogue. Reach out to us on social media or leave us a comment below. Your input fuels the conversations we have. You can find all of our episodes on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for our upcoming content. We appreciate your support. And if you enjoy the podcast, please consider leaving us a 5-star review. Your review helps amplify our reach and brings our content to more listeners. Welcome back, everyone, to the final installment in our Probate Story Series. Today, we'll be wrapping up this series with a story that highlights the peace of mind and ease that comes from thoughtful, advanced estate planning. Before we dive into this story, I want to remind you that all probate doesn't have to be a daunting process. With proper estate planning, you can reduce the stress for your loved ones, ensure that your wishes are honored, and potentially reduce the time your estate is in probate. This last episode in the series underscores how working together with your spouse and an estate planning attorney can make all the difference. As with all episodes in our probate series, these stories are inspired by real events and real people. Let's meet Jessica and Richard, a couple who had been married for over 30 years. Like many couples, they wanted to ensure that the surviving partner would be cared for if one of them passed away. Jessica had been dealing with some health challenges, which spurred their decision to update their estate plans. Jessica knew that if something happened to her, Richard would be the one handling her affairs. Having gone through probate with her parents, she wanted everything to be as straightforward as possible for Richard. They decided to take action and work on their estate plans together. One of their big questions was if a trust was right for them. After discussing their situation and estate planning goals with an estate planning attorney, they weighed their options and decided that a wills-based plan would help them reach their estate planning goals together. They understood that some of their assets might go through probate, and they were okay with that. And now, let's take a brief moment to hear from our sponsor. Are you in Maryland or DC, embarking on your estate planning journey? Let us guide you through the process. Join us for a complimentary 15-minute call with a member of our team. There's no obligation. Check out the show notes for the scheduling link. Your first step towards securing your family's future starts here. In light of her health, Jessica's main estate planning goal was to ensure that Richard would have an easy time handling probate after she passed away. While Richard would receive most of her estate, Jessica also wanted to leave specific requests to friends and family members. By working with an estate planning attorney, she was able to fully customize her will to include all of her loved ones, whether they were blood-related or otherwise. She also took additional steps beyond updating her estate documents, such as ensuring her beneficiaries were up to date. We've discussed the importance of updating beneficiaries in a previous podcast episode, and on our YouTube channel. Jessica and Richard's story is a perfect example of why it's important to keep your beneficiaries current on bank accounts, life insurance policies, and investment accounts. In addition to her estate plan, Jessica arranged for certain assets, like her bank accounts and life insurance policies, to pass directly to Richard as a payable on death beneficiary. This decision, along with her thoughtful approach to estate planning, ensured that the majority of her assets would pass to Richard outside of probate. While they began the estate planning process, understanding that some of their assets might need to go through probate, having up-to-date beneficiaries listed on Jessica's accounts reduced the number of probate assets. This strategic move not only streamlined the estate administration process, but also provided Richard with quicker access to vital funds during what would undoubtedly be a challenging time. Probate can be a lengthy and costly process, often involving court fees and administrative expenses. By minimizing the assets that would go through probate, Jessica effectively preserved a larger portion of her estate for Richard and her designated beneficiaries. Furthermore, this approach alleviated potential disputes among family members and friends, as beneficiaries were clearly outlined and legally established. Unfortunately, about a year after they completed their estate plans, Jessica passed away. Richard was understandably devastated, but he knew he had to carry out Jessica's final wishes. Despite his grief, he approached the probate process with confidence. Since they had completed their estate plans together, Richard was able to take on the role of personal representative without any reservations. Jessica had expressed how much it meant to her for him to take care of her estate while she was relatively healthy and of sound mind. Their decisions were deliberate and made without pressure. One of the first things Richard needed to do to open the estate was present Jessica's will to the Register of Wills. Since they both had invested in having their wills prepared by an attorney, they had been advised to file their wills at their local Register of Wills office for safekeeping. When Richard went to the office to inform them of Jessica's death, he presented a proper death certificate and noted that Jessica's will was in their vault. Everything else was in order, and there were no complications in getting him officially appointed as personal representative. The point I want to highlight here is how Jessica's meticulous planning made Richard's role as personal representative much easier. Most of their bank accounts passed outside of probate, along with any jointly held assets, such as the home they built together. Richard was responsible for having Jessica's personal property appraised, which included her jewelry, some art, and furniture inherited from her grandmother. The appraisal was submitted with the inventory. Typically, an inventory is one of the first major filings in the probate process, followed by at least one accounting. I've covered inventories and accountings on my YouTube channel, and I can include links to some of those videos below. In simplest terms, the inventory creates the foundation for the state's value for the Orphans Court and Register of Wills. It's a snapshot of the value of all assets owned by the decedent on the date of death. In Jessica and Richard's case, their foresight in ensuring that most of their assets would pass outside of probate and that the value of the probate estate was below the value of will bequest led the Register of Wills to conclude that Jessica's estate did not contain enough assets to require completing the probate process. Jessica had no debtors, and Richard paid the funeral expenses from Jessica's financial account in which he was the payable on death beneficiary. He also fulfilled all of the specific bequests Jessica made in her will using assets that both Richard and Jessica agreed would be set aside for this purpose. The genuine love and respect they had for each other, along with their shared commitment to minimize the impact of probate, contributed to the successful fulfillment of Jessica's wishes. This story illustrates the power and value of planning together. Too often, we hear from people seeking estate planning assistance when their loved one is in the hospital or when they're past the point of being able to create an estate plan. Jessica and Richard took the time to sit down while they were both relatively healthy, discuss their options, and make decisions without duress. Everything was laid out clearly, and Jessica's careful planning ensured that her husband wasn't left scrambling and that her specific bequests were honored. I also want to take a moment to highlight how Richard's diligence and attention to detail played a significant role in this success story. Even while processing his grief and traveling to lay Jessica to rest, he made sure to stay on top of deadlines, communicated effectively with the Register of Wills, and presented the necessary documentation promptly. These traits, combined with Jessica's thoughtful planning, meant that Richard didn't have to worry about debts, disputes, or confusion because everything was organized and clear. Jessica's plan provided Richard with the peace he needed to focus on healing and honoring her memory. Jessica and Richard's story is a perfect example of how advanced estate planning can provide peace of mind. In estate planning, there's no one-size-fits-all solution, only the plan that works best for you. Their practical approach to estate planning allowed them to take control of their future. By planning together, they gained a clear understanding of each other's final wishes, which led to a smoother, shorter, and less expensive probate process. Whether you're in a similar situation or just starting to think about estate planning, remember that it's never too early to plan. It's a gift you give to yourself and your loved ones. Let's recap some of the key points from today's episode. Number 1, plan early and plan together. Jessica and Richard worked together to create a plan that made things easier for both of them, ensuring peace of mind even in a difficult time. Number 2, the right plan makes a difference. Because Jessica and Richard had thought through the best way to structure their assets, the bulk of Jessica's estate passed outside of probate, simplifying and shortening the process significantly. And number 3, be diligent. Richard's diligence in following through on Jessica's wishes and staying on top of deadlines ensured that the probate process was smooth and efficient. And that wraps up our Probate Story Series. Thank you so much for joining me through this journey. I hope these episodes have given you a clearer understanding of what probate is and how having a thorough estate plan can make probate easier for your loved ones. If you have questions or want to start your estate planning journey, we're here to help. Reach out to the law offices of Elsa W. Smith and schedule a complimentary 15-minute call with a member of our team. We'd be honored to guide you through this process so you can find the same peace of mind that Jessica and Richard did. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Wills, Women, and Wealth podcast. I'm Elsa W. Smith, your Maryland estate planning and probate attorney. Until next time, remember, stay informed, stay empowered, and take control of your legacy.